Hi, my name is Tiffany Temple, and the name of my article is Even on His Birthday, a Black Funeral Director Can't Escape COVID Deaths, written by Rachel Chasen, March 8th, 2022, out of the Washington Post. I believe the title of this article really should have been, What About the Funeral Directors? This was a statement spouted by Mr. Harry Close, a funeral director from Maryland and president of the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. During the height of COVID, Mr. Close went to a Home Depot looking for protective gear for his staff and noticed everything was out, and he asked to speak to a manager, and the manager said, "I'm sorry, all of our supplies went to the medical centers around here." And Mr. Close said, "What about the funeral homes? What about the funeral directors?" And the manager said, "I'm sorry, I didn't even think about you all." And that is sometimes how funeral directors and those in the funeral profession are looked at, kind of pushed to the side, and how that has an effect on those in the profession and possibly those that are getting ready to go into the profession, how that can affect us mentally, physically, and spiritually as well. Mr. Close talked about in the article his fight for funeral professionals to be equally recognized as a priority for vaccinations and other resources, just like the healthcare workers and first responders at that time. The media focused so much on that group of people and never talked about the funeral directors or the funeral industry. They talked about the deaths, but still, that was it, just the deaths. And nobody really thought about who takes care of the dead. So it was almost like out of sight, out of mind. And so in the article, it talks about how he went to the state senators and the governor of Maryland, even Dr. Fauci, to get that recognition and the fight that he had to put up with that. Now, the flip side to that was that in this article, he also talked about the disparity of COVID-related deaths between African Americans and white Americans. It was 1.7 times higher. And that also affected the Black funeral directors. He was losing friends from his associations almost left and right from COVID. And even our own Mr. Randy Anderson is quoted in this article as saying that in the state of Alabama, the only deaths that he knew of as far as funeral directors were African Americans. A lot of that had to deal with, too, in the African American community, was a mistrust with the government and with vaccinations. This hit home for me because I work in a funeral home that's in Tuskegee, Alabama, the home of the Tuskegee experiment, Macon County. And a lot of our clients have been impacted because of that. They are living people that were impacted by that experiment, whether it was a family member or someone that they knew, even some of my in-laws, that affects them as well too. So that is something that was very real, and people were very hesitant about taking the vaccination. Mr. Close also and his staff, they didn't want to take the vaccination either. They didn't want to get COVID. They did not want to handle bodies that had COVID, but they also were not trusting the government. A lot of misinformation was going on. And that played a large part in the struggle. Not only were you fighting the ideas and what was inbred in people in your community about the mistrust of the government, but also trying to fight the government and getting what was needed to protect yourselves. And it was so much so that Mr. Close ended up having some physical issues, on the verge of a stroke and a heart attack. Even having to have surgery to restart. He had fibrillation, had to restart his heart. And he talked about whether or not he was going to stay in the business because of the stress. And one of the things that he mentioned, he said, who eases the burden of the burden holder? We're the burden holder of many of our clients. We talk to them, we take in their griefs, but who does that for us? And this article really shows that even as funeral directors, the same psychological thought processes that we give to our clients, the same care that we give to our clients, needs to be the same care that we give to ourselves. Thank you.